25th verse.
Which page is that?
This is on page 144 of the Bhagavad Gita commentary. Avyaktoyam achintyoyam avikaryoyam uchyate tasmadevam viditvainam nanu sochitum arhasi. Here the translation is, this Atman is said to be unmanifested, unthinkable, and immutable. Therefore, knowing it as such, you should not grieve. Now we've got a little, in a couple of verses, he will keep on emphasizing, you should not grieve. He began his discourse, Sri Krishna began his discourse. On the 11th verse is saying, you should not grieve. The wise do not grieve for the living or the dead. Asochan vaschochastvam. So you speak words of wisdom, yet you are grieving like an ordinary person. That is generally what we do. When the crunch comes, all of philosophy goes flying out, and then just this afternoon, somebody was saying, what is spirituality? Yes, spirituality. When you think yourself as a spirit, that's spirituality. You are spiritual. As simple as that. When you think of yourself as spirit and you superimpose the ideas of a personality on that, it's a spirituality. Generally what we do is, we superimpose the ideas of a spirit on the personality. So that's the time when everything flies out, when the crisis comes. So, of course, in the book, scripture called the Brahma Sutras, in the introduction, Shankaracharya explains both these views. When the self, the Atman, is superimposed on the body and the mind, etc. And contrariwise, the body and mind, etc. are superimposed on the self. Both are bad, but this is much better when the ideas of the personality or the ego are superimposed on the ideas of a spirit. That's it. So here we have a couple of things that we need to look into. First he says, avyakto ayam. Ayam this. This is, what is this? This is the self, the Atman, which is under discussion. It is unmanifest. Unmanifest to the senses. What happens is, when we see something through the senses, we have something called direct perception. It's a perception. This self, this Atman, is not seen through the senses. That's the reason why it's called, it's not manifest. It cannot be perceived. Now, well, we can, if it's not perceived, we can infer, because that's another method of knowledge according to Vedanta. Like when you see a hill that has kind of smoke, then you can infer that there has to be some fire to give rise to that smoke. So when you see one thing, you can infer something else. So here the Lord says, the second one also, achintya, that is, it cannot be thought of, because there is no reference. You have fire and then you have smoke. You infer one thing from seeing another thing. Here you don't have this. And then there is something called another methods of knowledge is by implication. It's arthapati. Now there is a guy who's called, the normal example is, there is a fat Devadatta. He doesn't eat during the day. So by implication we understand that he should be eating at night, or in the dark, or whatever, or when there is no one around. So Pino Devadatta Dinam na bhukte nattam bhukte. So implication. So the Lord demolishes that also and saying, avikaryo. It's no. You cannot by implication also find out that this thing, the form has changed. This person is fat and this person is thin, or the Atman has undergone a kind of a change or mutation. We can sense that things have changed within us. My senses were dominant in the morning, now they have become a little weak, or my mind was in a different state of mind and now it's or when I was young it was a different mind, now it's a different mind, I can see these changes in my senses, in my mind. But I cannot see these changes, or can I think about these things, or can perceive the self. So for the 10, 11 verses, he constantly, the Lord, has from different viewpoints, he's trying to explain to Arjuna what the self is. Because the self, if it is brought within the purview of a mind, if a concept, then it is no longer self. Yes, if you can conceptualize a soul, it is no longer a soul. It is limited by your mind, or limited by your words. And the Vedas say it is beyond speech and mind. The speech and mind recoil from this. So here it is saying, is Atman is said to be. Said by whom? It by the scriptures. Here the commentator is saying by the scriptures called the Vedas. Vedas means knowledge. What knowledge? I mean the whole mass of books that we called Vedas is called knowledge. Knowledge of what? Knowledge that is supersensory, which is not acquired through the senses or through the ordinary mind. That is called Vedas. It is called the mind of God. Some people like to kind of glamorize this and say, that's the mind of God, the Vedas. So it is spoken of by these scriptures that the self, the Atman, is unmanifest, beyond the thought, and it's immutable, beyond all changes. Therefore, knowing it as such, you should not grieve. It's a kind of the Lord also tries to kind of make fun. If you know that it is like this, why should you grieve? Yeah. It's like, why should you grieve? If you are a kind of a knowledgeable person, you've been talking big, and then why should you grieve about this? If the Atman is like this. Because remember that he begins the discourse with, you grieve for those who should not be grieved, yet you speak words of wisdom. The wise grieve neither for the living nor the dead. Why should the wise grieve for certain things are inevitable? Now when it's raining or it's pouring or something like that, will you grieve? No, you've seen this thing before. Certain things you don't grieve about. And only when things affect you, then you start grieving. I was without an umbrella and I got drenched, I got a cold. If other people get a cold, I get drenched, that doesn't matter to me. So, and we had seen the idea, the wise man is qualified as a wise man, Pandita. It translated as wise man, but Pandita is now an English word, so Pandita. So, Pandita means one who has a knowledge of the self. If you have the knowledge of the self, you will not grieve for those who are living or the dead or for anything. So here you have been speaking words of wisdom, and yet you have been grieving here. He's trying to kind of summarize his ignorance and what has been spoken about as the Atman. We know the Lord is trying to awaken this dormant knowledge which is latent not only in Arjuna but every one of us. Every one of us has that latent knowledge. It needs a kind of a preceptor or kind of a spark or a kind of a shock to awaken her. Even Hanuman was so depressed, he's saying, how can I cross this ocean? And then Jambuvan and all these other guys say, don't you remember what you did when you were young? You did this and you had all these powers, really? And then he reflected on them and his powers were awakened. These verses are just to awaken our own inherent knowledge. Of course, Arjuna is talking about Arjuna, yes, all right. But just to make us understand, somewhere deep down, through various, you can say, avenues, somewhere a kind of a spark will bring forth this kind of knowledge. And then you don't need to read the rest of the Gita once you know. That's Sri Ramakrishna is saying, what's a sign of knowledge? You will not even carry one book along with you. You know, when the author of the gospel, he asked the maidservant, does he read many books? Oh, no, he doesn't read any books. He had the idea that to be wise and to be learned and to be intelligent, you've got to read a lot of books. So he was a school teacher, and school teachers think like this. He did nothing. And then, they are all on the tip of the tongue. So he was surprised. Really? He doesn't read anything? Oh, why should he read anything? He has gone to the source of knowledge, the self there, which is consciousness. He knows the foundation of this universe. These books have been written in ignorance, in non-knowledge. Whether God is there or not there, half the libraries in this world are filled with that. Some say is there, some say it's not there. And see, when you have the source of knowledge there within you, you don't have to read books. People will read you then. You become a kind of a living source of knowledge. And then he said, okay, you can keep one book, the Bhagavad Gita. That's the most he allowed us. If that's a sign of knowledge, you read. You can keep the Bhagavad Gita. My guru had gone for a kind of a retreat, more like a kind of a 1 year of intense austerities. So when he went on his way, he stopped at Kankal because there's one center of the Ramakrishna mission where two of Swami Vivekananda's disciples were there, Kalyanananda and Nishchayananda. So they asked him, where are you going? Saying, Now I'm going to the Himalayas to practice meditation and austerities. And he had a small bag with a couple of books and just one set of clothes. Oh, with such a big baggage you're going around? And he felt so embarrassed. I just have 2 books and one set of clothes. Even that is too much for these souls. So, to come back to this, why he's saying you should not grieve. Grief kinds of compresses the mind, compresses knowledge. Everything that's dark and sad and gloomy and depressive and sorrowful and painful, all these things, they just kind of compress your knowledge, compress the mind, makes the mind. That's why they said there are 2 types of it. Whenever you do something, if your mind expands, you're doing something right. You're thinking right, or eating right, everything you're doing right. And when yourself, your mind starts getting compressed, it's called a sankochita and vikasata. It's compressed. You're doing something wrong. So, in that mind, you tell that person 1,000 times about the Atman, not going to listen to you. You tell him 1,000,000 times about God, he's not going to listen to you. Nothing. It's a kind of, that person has closed his door. Nothing. That person contemplates that person's grief. It is so manifest, so palpable to that person. That person doesn't want to hear anything, see anything, do anything, just wants to drown in self-pity and, you see, the whole world is terrible. And here I am, nobody is there to ask about me. Yeah. As if the whole world is bothered of what you are doing. Nobody bothers. So, it is a state of, you can say, non-knowledge. It is a negative state. Until and unless that is clear, no kind of secular or spiritual knowledge can take root in that. So, this is the reason why, even in the next verse, talks about don't grieve. So the next verse is, or if you conceive of the Atman as given to constant births and deaths, even then, O mighty armed, you should not sorrow, you should not grieve. The Sanskrit is atachainam nitya jatham nityam va manyase mritam tatapi tvam mahabhavo nainam sochitam arhasi. You don't weep, don't grieve about all these things. What happens is this idea of the self, it's kind of, there are the materialist, different grades of materialist. In the old days, they were called the Charvakas. It's a kind of a very popular philosophy. Charu Vakya means something. Charu means beautiful. Vakya is words. They used to have beautiful words. There's no God and there's no soul and there's nothing. You enjoy yourself. There are some guys who say the body is the soul. The soul is not separate from the body. So when you die, bhasmi bhutasya, there's no coming back on all this. Everything is over with death. You don't have to bother. So these arguments are very ancient arguments. Today we have revived some of these arguments and think, yeah, these are modern arguments. No, these are not modern arguments. The human mind is quite old, fascinated with these things. Amongst these materialists, they're saying, okay, you have a body, the body is a soul. Now, the body cannot run without senses. You have a body and you don't have eyes and ears and nose and mouth and nothing. So what? So there's a kind of a the sensory system is like a kind of a superior to the body. So that's okay. Another class of these materialists came saying, you see, even if you have the body and even if you have the sensory system and the motor system, if you don't have a mind, everything is over. So you have a kind of another layer of the soul, as it were. And then saying, yeah, if there is no life force, no prana in the whole thing, you may have the best looking body and the best everything, but it's all dead, dull matter. What is reality? So the Vedantins, what they do is they put one class of materialists against the other, saying you all quarrel amongst yourselves. And you come to a conclusion, then come to discuss with us. So there is, these materialists are there. There are some who say the soul is born with the body. When the body is born, the soul is born. When the body dies, the soul dies. There, it's over. These are some of the old philosophers. Then there are the Buddhists. Saying, you see, no, that the intellect, what you call Vijnana, is actually the soul, as what you call. Now, this soul is kind of flickers, it's kind of it flickers, when it flickers and then it flickers off, on and off, it gives rise to the second flicker and kind of stream of consciousness, they call. That is the soul, they are saying. Nothing is permanent. And then there are some who say, okay, yeah, the soul is kind of eternal, but what happens is it gets attached to certain merits and demerits of the body. And then the soul is conditioned by these merits and demerits. And when death occurs, those merits and demerits are dropped off and the soul again goes to. So most of these arguments are, you can say, quite, immature. When you ask these people, okay, fine, then what makes you feel you are kind of separate from the body? And there have been many instances where you feel that you are separate from your body-mind complex. So these various arguments have been given. Some say, there is a kind of the whole cosmic soul comes into being with the cosmos, and then at the time of dissolution, cosmic. What they want is, they don't want two things, the soul and the non-soul. Vedanta also says, yes, don't get two things. These two things the duality will create problems. So, what does Vedanta say? Vedanta says there is only the soul. And what about the other things? That's a kind of a mirage, an appearance. Even they say, only the materialist give emphasis on matter or mind. Mind also is nothing but matter. So this is matter and this is mind and this is a soul. So every philosophy emphasized this side, the matter side. And Vedanta emphasized this side. For these people, the soul was an illusion. For the Vedantins, matter was an illusion. There we are. And today, we can prove that the self exists. We cannot prove matter exists. There we are. So either you take one of the two views. Either you take matter is real and the soul is unreal, or the soul is real and the matter is real. Take. And then see what happens. But of course, Our real nature will not let us accept matter as the final goal or the reality, because we know intuitively these are impermanent, constantly changing, subject to pain. And if this is existence, who wants this kind of existence? Nobody would like this kind of existence, a painful existence, matter constantly transforming. There is something in us that says, yes, there is a deathless element in me. And here is, you are right. You are not the only one who thinks like that. Everyone who thinks, everyone with a little self-consciousness. That self-conscious in the sense, not somebody who's looking at you, that you become self-conscious. The self reflecting its knowledge on itself. That is there in everyone, and that is what frees us. So here he says that Atachainam Nitya Jatam, and if you think that, if you conceive of the Atman as constant, undergoing constant birth and death, why should you bother? Why should you grieve? Yes, it's like, it's a kind of a double, you can say, accusation for him. The bodies with the souls, even if you believe like that, that's why, on the other hand, he's giving an argument. On the other hand, if you think that the bodies are born and die, what is born and what is going to die will die, why should you grieve? When a general sends his troops, he knows there are plenty of casualties. Is he going to sit down, oh my God, I'm not going to send these people? Then what? He's not going to sit down and grieve. He's no general then. Arjuna is supposed to be this general there. He's a commander there. One of the commanders. They had different commanders. It will give a kind of a disaster. So it's trying to encourage him also. Take that heroic stand. Even if you think that bodies are born and bodies die and they are again reborn, why should you grieve about it? Go out and fight. So this and that's the reason why he's saying, or on the other hand, if you conceive of the Atman as given to constant births and deaths, even then, oh mighty arm, that's one of the epithets of Arjuna. You should not grieve, you should not sorrow. Why should you do that? When you see the whole cosmos as a kind of a playground of all those tremendous forces that are going on here, why do we kind of get depressed? There are beings stretching from the highest celestials down to the lowest. But we have said existence is this tiny bandwidth that called human. And everything has to serve the human beings. Why? Oh no, nothing like that. Existence is one long series of, we can say, different levels of, you can say, beings. This is just one. So when an avatar or God, he sees the whole of existence, he says, this one small fry making a big noise out of this. Yeah, so he should have kept quiet and gone and fight as a kind of as his duty. He's trying to egg him on. The next verse is, I'll read the Sanskrit first. Jatasya hi dhruvor mrityuh Dhruvam janmamritasya cha tasmada pariharyerte natvam sochitum arhasi. There again, you don't grieve. Says, death is certain for that which is born. Birth is certain for that which is dead. You should not therefore grieve. You should not lament over the inevitable. And here we are, this is on page 147, verse 27. So, everything, there's a long chain of cause and effect. Nothing is simple, nothing stands alone without being affected. If we are sitting here, but the whole world of cause and effect is playing down on us. Yes, there are some effects that are very manifest, like you turn the air conditioner off, or you turn the lights off. It's manifest, it affects you. There are some imperceptible effects, but we are in the whole chain of cause and effect. What is going to be born is going to die, and what's going to die will be born. So good enough for us. This is the doctrine of transmigration of souls. Even if you don't look at it as a transmigration of souls, we just take as things are under the law of causation. The law of causation, that's a dependent origination, is bound by the laws of time and space. So it is in time and space that the laws of causation, they keep on working. These laws keep on seeing that everything is running like clockwork in this universe. You don't get anything without a cause. So what is the effect was a cause previously, and then that cause has become an effect, and the effect will become the cause, and the cause will become an effect. It keeps on rolling down. So even if you look at it like that everything rises and falls, rises and falls. So why should you grieve about it? There is death inevitable. What we call as death, as we have seen, it's so demonized. Death is kind of, wow, such a finality to it. Then what? We have tried so hard to throw away all the divinity from us and have thrown it in some heaven. Divinity? Oh, that's God. Oh, that's angels. We are like just ordinary people. No. It's very clear. Swami Vivekananda says in that hymn, nearer my God to thee. In that hymn, he said, the Vedantists will just change one word. Nearer my God to me. I'm not going there. I'm going to bring you here. The divinity here is going to be manifest here in me. The idea of God has become so corrupted. That's why it began with the German philosophers, that the word God. They removed the whole thing out, put the word self. That's a much better word. There is no kind of confusion, no kind of antagonism, no kind of doctrine there to dispute this. We are talking about the self. We're not talking about God. And Nietzsche is saying, oh, God is dead. God is dead. And people quote this, God is dead. It's not simple a kind of a quotation. And he says, it's a long dialogue. And that person is searching, that doer of searching. Where is God? Where is God? He is going around with a lantern in the daytime, and people are calling him the fool. And there's a long, very, very emotional discourse that we have killed God. and we don't have enough water to wash that blood from our hands. God is dead? Yes, we have killed him. I mean, that is one of the most sublime passages in Western literature. I think we all should read it, this kind of. And people take one word, God is dead, from Nietzsche and say, he said God is dead. No. Yeah, but then, so let's come back to this. So, the idea is, we must feel ourselves to be divine. If you cannot feel yourself as divine, you can never believe in God. Impossible. It will be just a kind of a thought. You've been culturally adapted to think. Go and kneel, go and bow down, go and pray. You don't believe it. Belief is one thing. When you do not have knowledge, you believe. I believe in God, the Father Almighty. No! You can't do that. In religion, you don't believe. You have faith, that's a different thing. Belief means I do not know. This is what we're saying. If you cannot have faith that you have divinity manifest within you, you will never be religious. You can never believe in God or anything, or in salvation or moksha or anything. So it starts from here. As we keep on developing this idea of divinity, the ideas of God also will keep on getting magnified. So both these, the idea of a soul and the idea of God, are always linked. You cannot have one without the other. And linking them both, what linking them both is idea of the world. So Jiva, Jagat and Ishvara, these three categories. Ishvara is called the God, the Saguna Brahman, the manifested and non-manifested God. That which links God with the individual soul is this world. As you keep on increasing this divinity within you, this world becomes divinized. And so does our ideas of God also become magnified. You don't need to go to heaven for divinity or to hell. In fact, there could be a divinity there also. Who knows? Yes, of course. Dante's hell, and there are various levels of hell. So, to come back to, so as we keep on growing in divinity, our ideas of God and the world also change. This is an established. So knowledge is linked to this. So, nearer my God to me, there you are. Towards the end, you will find that the whole universe exists within you, in the soul, not you, that exists within the soul. And the soul is not different from God. So when we are talking about this, the soul, yesterday during the gospel I was saying, whether you know it or not, Sri Ramakrishna said, you are Rama. Yeah. Now, how many of us want to acknowledge this? That we are that reality? Oh, you see, no, that is a kind of a, that's meant for monks or those who are meant for some specialists, not meant for all of us. No, it's meant, this is the reality. And yesterday also, I gave the example of, there were two, remember those two monks, hefty monks, they are disputing whether this bowl is Brahman or no. One monk is saying, it is the reality. And the other monk is saying, it is nothing but metallic bowl. The bowl which the monks, you go and, accept alms in the almhouses. So they come to my guru and then he's saying, he was there. He was a scholar monk, and he was smallish and very sweet, and not very strong, and a thoughtful person. And with these two hefty Punjabi sadhus, coming and saying now, and they had those pincers, metallic pincers, the long, like it acts like a sword also. So he said now he has to satisfy both of them, saying you are right, this is Brahman, and you also right. How come two people can be right? Say, yes, this is Brahman from the highest standpoint, from the Paramarthika, this is Brahman. And from the relative standpoint, Vyavaharika, this is the metal bowl. So you are right, you are saying this is a metallic bowl, and you are right, this is the. But from different standpoint, different dimensions. So Sri Ramakrishna is saying, you are Rama from a highest standpoint, we are that reality. But from the relative standpoint, oh, you see, we are so weak, we are so limited with hundreds of things. These limitations you have put in. So here the Lord is giving him various arguments in order to break these self-imposed limitations. If he can free himself from those self-imposed limitations and concepts about himself, he'll attain that reality which from the highest dimension, as I said, he is that one. That reality. So that death is certain for that which is born. Yes. And birth is certain for that which is dead. Now, either if you look at it from the standpoint of reincarnation, perfectly okay. It's not only that Eastern religions believe in this idea of reincarnation was very widespread in many cultures. It gave the responsibility to that person. There is no God to save you. You work out your own salvation. If you don't get it this time, take it another time. Don't wait for a rope to fall down and pull yourself, and will pull you. Here, this is the ladder. Climb up. Because the rope might fall down your neck. And you might get into some other place. So this whole thing was, so what if you born, you will die, and then you will be born again, you will die again, you will be born again, so what is there? Oh, we have gone through endless births and deaths. The whole history has been written in your karmic records in something called the Chitta. Like you have the whole history of your evolution for the last billions of years. It's written in your DNA. You can take it and unravel and you'll find the Neanderthal and this and that. All the DNA, everything is there inside. All things that we have gone through is recorded. Yes, from the lowest to the highest, it's been recorded there. It's there in every cell. If you say, no, it's not in this cell, no, it's there in every cell. So our journey has been recorded. Another journey, that's a psychic journey, for that also has been recorded in the mind stuff. Everything that we have done and thought and worked and believed, it's all there. These are the two streams. So, that will be born, that will be die. And then there's a soul that is above these two streams. So it doesn't matter. Why should you grieve? Why should you bother? Why should you cry? Why do you weep and say the end of the world? Say, no, the world is quite big. It's quite big. It's bigger than what we think it is. So when Sri Ramakrishna, when he heard Swami Vivekananda say, this world is the devil's world, I could have created a better world. He quotes John Stuart Mill. I could have created. So Sri Ramakrishna looks at him kind of shocked. How much of the world do you know to even say such a thing? That's it. So we think our world is that, if I get what I like, everything is fine with me. If I don't get what I like, the world is a terrible place. So even if you remove the idea of a soul separate from the stream of consciousness, that flickering stream of consciousness, as the Buddhists say, or as the materialists want you to believe, that's nothing but matter. That's fine. Whatever is born will die, and whatever is dead will be reborn again in some form or the other. So what is there? When Swami Abhedananda, he comes to Sri Ramakrishna, he was interested in the philosophy of yoga. And then he wanted to practice. His friend says, don't practice it on your own. You need a guru. So he walks to Dakshineshwar, and he was so tired, and he finds Sri Ramakrishna is not there. He had gone to Calcutta. He has come from Calcutta. Says, he decides to wait. He was asked by another brother disciple, wait here. And late evening, Sri Ramakrishna arrives. And this boy, he goes, he was young, he was a teenager. He goes and says, I want to practice, I want to learn yoga. Can you teach me yoga? Sri Ramakrishna looks at him and says, yeah, I'll teach you yoga. And looks at him, you see. Yeah, this is going to be your last birth. You were a yogi in your previous birth. Okay, so he will finish it off this time. So the Lord knows every phase that we have gone through. Everything. We have forgotten everything. That's why he is called God, or he or she is called God. Simply, not just because he or she is in heaven. Everything has gone, that we have gone through, God knows. Really, God knows? Yeah, God knows. That's why when Sri Krishna says, death is certain for that which is born, birth is certain for that which is dead. You should not therefore lament over the inevitable. You cannot have a static universe. Imagine if this thing was there for the next 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. Can you imagine what will happen to us if this temple in you and me and every one of us will remain static without change? Not much fun, no? So one who is the ruler of this universe, the ruler of the souls, when he says, he's trying to encourage Arjuna to wake up and realize his real nature. I'll stop here for questions. We have 5 minutes more, 4 minutes rather. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.